Okay, hello, welcome to H3, the show about health, hope, and happiness. My name is Allan Friesen, and with me is Brother Scott Sweeman. How you doing tonight there, Brother Scott?
I'm doing good. A little windy here in Lethbridge, Alberta, but other than that, no snow. We're doing okay.
Excelente. All right, well, I'm excited to this episode of H3 and what we're going to learn and what we're going to share tonight. So tell us, what is it that we're going to be talking about there, Scott?
Well, I don't know. Can you see my background?
It looks like a lot of brains and brain scans and such.
Yes. A good eye. That's exactly what it is. The images behind me, for those of you that can see them, those of you that can't, are actually SPEC imaging. Have you heard of SPEC imaging?
SPEC, I have not.
Yeah, it's single photon emission computed tomography.
Cool. SPEC.
And yeah, it basically, my understanding is that it maps blood flow and activity in the brain.
Okay.
So, and there's some benefits and some drawbacks compared to the other imaging that we typically use, like MRIs.
Okay, interesting.
Now, what's really interesting, and I this is an aside, a little bit of an introduction, but when I was looking at this, and tonight we're going to be talking about brain health and the work of Daniel Amen, Dr. Daniel Amen, who's a leading brain researcher and health advocate. But imaging is becoming more and more available in North America, in Canada here too. In Alberta right now, we have 18, this is as of last year, 2023, so the number's gone up, 18 private imaging facilities in Alberta. 8 provided MRI exams, 6 provided CT exams, 7 provide SPEC exams, 8 provide SPEC CT exams, and 15 of the 18 are in the most populated centers, right? Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, and Red Deer. And the others are in Fort McMurray and or north of Edmonton. So pretty interesting. 17 are part of chain ownerships, and that's the big trend in private imaging is chain organizations. And so we're getting more and more access to these imaging services, both through the healthcare system, although there's a lot of backup there, but also through private imaging. And that's becoming more and more important as research develops, like we're going to talk about tonight.
Right. There is, of course, our viewers know that there's UT3 in Lethbridge, who is a private MRI clinic here. And a fun fact about UT3, there's different ratings for the magnet that they use, and it's based on a Tesla scale. And most of the commercial MRI,
is it how many of your car they can pick up?
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it works, but
well, that's a Tesla scale, right?
That's a Tesla scale. It's usually 0.5 of a Tesla is what the MRIs go at, and the one that UT3 has, because it was used for more advanced purposes previously, is a 1.5 Tesla. So it's a super strong magnet. So yeah.
Well, you and I have both been in the one here in Lethbridge, and
we
didn't come out scrambled or anything. It was actually a fantastic experience with the staff there. So
it was, and I did get confirmation that I have a brain. You can see it in the imaging, so that was good, because there's probably been people who would accuse me of not having one, so that was good news.
Well, and in typical H3 fashion, that was my way of leading into how this is different than an MRI.
Okay.
An MRI shows a lot of detail of the brain, but what the SPEC analysis does is it produces these maps of regions of activity, which you can see in the lower images that I'm pointing to on here. And it also produces these tomographic maps that you can see above, for use of a better word. And I apologize to all the imaging professionals out there. I'm sure I'm getting it wrong, but for laymen, that's basically how it goes. Now,
and to our viewers, don't send us brain images and want us to diagnose them for you. Yeah, like we're not qualified But anyways, so the
But you
top
can
one
send
was,
them to us if you want to share images of your brain, as long as it's, you know, appropriate for safe for work. It's okay.
the ones on top, Scott, with, you're probably gonna get to this, but all the purple is that's showing a lot of activity, a lot of blood flow in that area. Is that what that's showing?
My understanding is the red flow is actual, on the bottom one is the activity. And what we're going to be talking mostly about tonight is the shape of the top ones. So the one on the very far left is this sort of the normal shape of a brain.
Okay.
And then you can see that it's fairly well formed. There's not a lot of sort of dense, or my head's kind of in the way. And then the next one is a PTSD sufferer's brain. The third one is a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
TBI, yeah. And the last one is a combination of PTSD and a traumatic brain injury.
Interesting. So the one on the left is kind of the normal brain, and it's pretty symmetrical. I mean, it's
right.
a little bit different from side to side, but the other ones are markedly different from side
yeah,
to side.
and you can see like the classic PTSD, you can see there looks like there's a dent in sort of the top part of it. The valley is rather deep and cutting through, segmenting the brain in a rather asymmetrical way. When we go to the TBI or traumatic brain injury, that of course is physical trauma to the brain. And then when we see there's both, things get even more complex, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So why we're talking about this tonight is because I was watching a very interesting interview with Dr. Daniel G. Amen, A-M-E-N. He's a psychiatrist and brain health expert. And he's done a lot of research, primarily using SPECT imaging, like you can see here. And he's come up with some very interesting findings. And I'd like to talk about those tonight.
Great.
Okay.
Every time you see Dr. Amen, I think of Amen, 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 Amen. Sorry.
He's very interesting. He's very interesting to listen to. He has some, to me anyway, odd little mannerisms, but he's very knowledgeable. He's done tens of thousands of these. He actually owns some clinics in North America that focus on this. So his research suggests that certain mental illnesses and behavioral issues or patterns correlate with distinct patterns in the brain that are revealed through these SPECT scans. For example, decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex is linked to ADHD, while heightened activity in the limbic system can be associated with anxiety or depression.
Right. Okay. Hey, can I interject? Have you talked? Yeah. You and I talked about, or do you know who Jill Bolte Taylor is?
I think we talked a little bit about her. Yeah.
Yeah, she's that woman who is a brain researcher, like a super smart about brains, and she actually had a stroke, and so she watched her brain shutting down, right? And at the end of that process, because she had this big stroke, she like couldn't speak, couldn't talk, couldn't move by herself, nothing, right? And then she regained all her brain function, but the thing was she could see it happening and knew what was happening because she's a brain researcher, right? So she kind of knew where things were going. So anyways, fascinating story.
We should talk more about that. I can't imagine being able to watch and interpret that process, although I think that most of us would like to know more about what's happening to our bodies as we go through things. It certainly perhaps stop us from doing some things. And Dr. Amen's research, one of the fundamentals to his research is that the brain heals, and the brain has a lot of elasticity, and we can actually reduce a lot of the damage done to our brains by bad habits or trauma or those types of things. So a lot of hope in that, which fills one of our criteria for the show, for sure.
Definitely.
So, of course, one of the things he looked at is that our brains in modern society get minor traumatic injuries a lot. he says if you play any contact sport, and there's big ones that everyone knows about, like hockey, or he has some numbers about hockey research, and it's in the 90s, the percentage of players that have some sort of physical brain damage from their sport. He's saying that, even if you've taken a bad fall, if you've been hit with something on the work site or those activities, that our brains actually suffer damage from that, and it affects how we think and how we feel, even though it may not be severe enough that we feel we need to, seek medical attention for those things. The other thing that he talks about a lot is how three major things: diet, sleep, and exercise. When they're done right, our brain looks like on the left, and when they're done poorly, looks more on that sliding scale to the right of our screen, where you can see that there's, a lot of physical deformity or damage to the brain. And those are the things that he's worked on throughout his career, of proving that by improving your diet, improving your sleep and quality of sleep, and through physical activity, as well as some cognitive therapy, that you can recover the health of your brain. And he's proving that with SPECT scans and other scientific tools to measure that shape. An area that's been really popular for him is ADHD, especially where, the diagnosis at times can be very difficult. I know, having a family that works in the school system, at times, people talk about ADHD like it's saying somebody has blue eyes or green hair, like it's a very common thing. There's a big movement in the States that a lot of the food we consume is causing ADHD. What's your feelings on the prevalency of ADHD and related I don't want to say illnesses, but related conditions? Do you think they're much more prevalent?
Definitely. Yeah, no question. And I'm sure some of it is to do with diagnosis, but then a lot of it is to do with those three factors that Dr. Amen referenced, right? Sleep, nutrition, and movement. In many cases, there's, especially for our younger people kind of a thing, if they don't have the type of role models, the type of activities that, let's say they're in a family that can't afford a whole bunch of activities. So what do? They sit in front of a TV or sit in front of their computer or sit in front of their phone, and so they're not getting physical activity. And if they're on a steady junk food, processed food type diet, right, then that is going to damage their brain as well. And glyphosate, as you know, is a common constituent of so many foods, that if that can lead to problems that way. And of course, poor sleep as well. You stay up late, you eat shitty food, and you all of those things factor into more of ADHD, which is like, it's more of a tendency than it is like something that has any really negative impacts to you. It's just like something you can manage and you can improve on as you go, right? Like, so also people, they talk, some people there describe themselves as neurodivergent, right? Well, it's certainly the same kind of a thing, ADHD plus, and that is at least contributed to by those three things, right? So, yeah, that's my opinion.
And it checks with the research that I've done on it and my own experience with it. I think that I have heard people talking about it as an evolutionary development in our species, that, that as it becomes more prevalent, it becomes a trait of our species. And the numbers, especially in North America, of people with ADHD, although globally it's similar, is perhaps an indication that as a species, we're continuing to evolve. And one of those evolutionary paths, which may branch off or may dead end, which happens in evolution all the time, is occurring in recorded history in terms of our brain function and some of those features. So interesting for sure.
Yes.
Anyway, getting back to Dr. Amen, one of the big things that he talks about is the Mediterranean diet. And I know that you're a fan of that. Rich in healthy fats, fish, vegetables, and low in processed foods, people who are on those types of diets actually have bigger brain volume. And he's done a lot of research into addiction, something I know that you're very interested in. And people with addiction, the physical size of the brain actually shrinks, even though it's under attack, and shows a lot of symptoms of inflammation and other issues. So his suggestion is that by simply increasing, especially omega-3 fats, which are primarily fish oils, right?
Yeah. You can get exceptions. I use an omega-3 that is a fish oil, but I also find that I might change it up to a plant-based one, because you can get it from plant-based type things to the sources as well, because I find I like taste the fishy, like I don't like what the taste of it the aftertaste after you. So yeah.
It doesn't bother me. Fleur tried it and became sick, vomited and threw it up, and just
wow.
The taste of the fish was so strong. And she likes fish, and I don't particularly. But yeah, so that's a concern. And I was going to ask you, as somebody who tries to eat and does successfully eat very healthily, and also as a vegan, how do you work in those healthy fats?
Yeah, so that I take supplements for that, specifically for that. Actually, do you remember when we had the show about Eat Right, Move Right, Eat Right, Move Right, Think Right, I think it is, by,
yep.
What's that doctor's name again?
Oh, goodness gracious. I can see the cover of the book.
Yeah. So that was where he had stressed the importance of that, and how those omega-3s, we get omega-6, way too much omega-6, which can be harmful for our health. A little bit we need, but not as much as we get, because I think a lot of omega-6s are in processed foods, and omega-3s are not. And omega-3s, generally, we don't have get enough of that. And so I'm also taking, wheat germ, I believe it is. I add it to my oatmeal every morning. And then that's a big source of omega-3s as well. So, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, he did a study that he references. They looked at 500 patients that had a history of depression, medically diagnosed depression, and they split the group up. And one group, they gave omega-3 supplements daily for 6 months, and they gave another group, placebo group. And the group that was given omega-3 supplements had a reduction of 60% of symptoms compared to the placebo group. Yeah. So not just, I feel 60% better, but in their diagnosis after the 6 months compared to the placebo group. So that's very interesting.
That is. Can I share a fun fact that I learned recently?
Please.
For a drug company to introduce a new drug, all it has to do is be better than a placebo. That's it. So if the placebo has like a 65%, hey, I feel better because I'm taking this. Oh, it's a placebo. Oh, nice. And the drug is like 68%. Oh, okay, it passes, which is ludicrous. Like, if it's that close to what a placebo effect is, it makes no sense. But I did learn that there's agencies that compare the new drugs on the market with existing drugs on the market. Then you can get a comparison about how its efficacy, its side effects, how it compares with an actual drug that's already existing that has a proven record, right? Which that makes a whole bunch more sense, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's actually data that you and I can access. We can look up, I think it's called the Canadian Drug Agency, I think is what it's called. But they're not the only ones, but they do these analysis comparing new drugs coming to the market with existing drugs to see, okay, where's the value here, right? So, yeah.
But, it's really interesting, and it ties in with what we're talking about with addiction. Dr. Amen's work on addiction found that through his SPECT scannings, people with severe addiction often have greatly reduced prefrontal cortex activity,
Mm.
which is tied in with impulse control and all sorts of things. But recently, as you know, I take medication as I'm recovering from some brain damage of my own when I was fighting for my life in a coma. And when I get a bad cold, I take ephedrine. Ephedrine comes from a plant. It can be reproduced chemically, but it is a naturally occurring substance, and it's a decongestant. I take it instead of, the ones that are mixed because I don't want any extra sedatives. I don't want cough suppressants that could affect my respiratory, my breathing, those types of things. And very recently, you used to be able to get them because athletes were starting to use them in conjunction with exercise routines because they have a thermobaric response. Don't completely understand that, but it has something to do with when they're reducing fat and increasing muscle.
Mm.
Anyway, they've been outlawed in Canada for over-the-counter sale now. You can't buy them any longer. Apparently, they can also be used to make methamphetamine. But I find it really interesting that, opioids like Oxy, for example, used to be available over the counter. Codeine's available in Canada. And a natural source that's been used in traditional medicine for centuries, if not decades, well, certainly centuries, is being outlawed because it might harm some people. And some people have had a negative reaction resulting in death because their hearts or whatever the situation is couldn't take it. So again, I find our policies on drugs to be very, very suspect. They don't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, so you said it comes from a natural source too, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What is that natural source?
It's the plant name, the epha part of ephedrine comes in the plant, which is epha something. I can look it up.
Okay. My only point in that is that, to take a natural substance, like, so I can go find this plant and eat it if I want those effects, right? Whereas, of course, the drug manufacturers don't like that. They want to make a pill that, instead of it being like a 10-cent type of leaf that you're going to eat. Wait a minute, why is my battery set as low? Hang on a second. Uh-oh. I got it plugged in even. What the heck?
In simple English, it's a Chinese name, ephedra. Yes. It's called yellow hemp.
Yellow hemp.
Yeah. And when I was speaking to my... Yeah, I'll just carry on. When I was speaking to the health food guy, he said that the amount of ephedrine in just a straight up single ingredient ephedrine tablet, which you used to be able to buy at a health store, is tiny compared to what you would get in like a Sudafed or a cold medicine tablet with multiple ingredients. So his statement, and I'm not saying it's necessarily true or accurate, was that the straight single ingredient ephedrine tablets that were being sold in health food stores, you would have to take 3 or 4 or 5 of them to equal what would be in a cold tablet, which is still over the counter. But c'est la vie. Makes no sense. Are you back, buddy? Did your battery solution?
The warning doesn't seem to be coming up anymore, so I think I'm okay. Excellent.
So one of the things that's come out of this is that a larger study of 1,200 individuals that were addicts, drug addicts, after their scans, after their physical brain, when they were put on tailored treatments, looking at their nutrition, sleep, etc., and some cognitive treatment, their success was 30% higher than standard treatment alone. Mm-hmm. And, we're talking about some supplements, we're talking about, some counseling, some, simple activities like turning off screen time before bed, not taking stimulants like caffeine, etc., in the afternoon. Not expensive, as you pointed out. That makes them undesirable to market, right? Because it's not, no one's making any money from it. But 30% higher is significant with the addiction problem in our population.
Definitely, it's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
So there's been a lot of studies done supporting these, and as usual, we're sort of getting close to the time. But I wanted to add in there the big things that damage your brain health, and not just Dr. Amin, but a lot of people, a lot of researchers have indicated the same. Addiction, and we don't understand addiction. Caffeine in small doses can be healthy, but brain doctors like Dr. Amin say caffeine damages your brain, and he's got scans of showing the progression. The more caffeine people take in, and I imagine I have deep furrows in my brain from the amount of caffeine I ingest. But so addiction, even at the basic levels, right? You're addicted to singing. I think that's okay.
That's okay. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Dr. Scott, for that diagnosis. I appreciate that. So,
you're the only one that I will offer my professional diagnosis to. Dr. Scott approves of your addiction to singing and being happy.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Chronic stress, way too much of that, leads to a hyperactive limbic system.
Yes.
And it changes the brain structure significantly. Yeah. Like, if you're interested, Dr. Amin's written over 40 books, published a whole bunch of papers. I'm just giving you the highlights here, but crazy changes in our brain structure. Like, short periods of stress, that's part of our nature as a species, as an animal,
sure.
Right?
We need that to survive, to run away from the tiger and that kind of stuff. We need it. And then after it's done, we should be, we back in the day, we just like, whew, all right, relax. Heart rate returns to normal, the stress goes away. But we're in an environment where it's freaking email or the next, text message, or the next post or something, right? And all of those are like anxiety producing and create so much of comparison and so much of I'm less than, because look at this person's pictures. Like, this person is so, got their shit together, they're perfect, and they're wealthy, and they're beautiful or handsome or whatever. And then, if you're always in like a comparative state, that kind of thing, that's problematic as well, right? So,
yeah, great point. We are locked into that comparative state in what we consider developed.
Right. And then find it hard to be in this present moment, right? If we can be in, what's that?
I said we find it impossible.
Yes. And without being in this present moment, then we're always either worried about what's going to happen or resentful, concerned, have regrets about what happened in the past, right? But the more that we can bring ourselves to this present moment through, like, meditation is certainly one of the most, common tools to get us in that present moment. I'm going to put in an argument for singing, because singing, you have to be there in the moment to sing the song. When I start thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to sing, then I screw up the current one I'm doing, right? If I just stay in the present moment for that song, then it's always going to be better than getting to the next thing. So.
Amen. That's so true. I have found recently, we did a couple of shows on medical devices, but I picked up a new watch. This one's a Garmin. I like it. I had an Apple Watch, but this one actually monitors a lot more of my health systems. And it has I set up an alarm to tell me when my body is showing signs of stress. And it's times when I don't think I'm under stress.
Really, eh?
And the alarm goes off and I look at it and I'm like, oh, my heart rate's up. Oh, my body temperature is doing this and my breathing is, increasing. And it's really made me more aware of the things that I do that cause a low-level stress reaction. It's not like I'm freaking out, but, my body is going into that fight or flight status, doing everyday things. And it's really helped make me aware. And you could do it without a fancy watch. You just need to, like you said, be more aware of what's going on inside of you, right?
Yes.
So,
if any of us, all of us, like, I mean, I know this works for me, and I'm sure it works for every human on the planet. If you could just basically pause and then just engage in being aware of your breath, the sensation of the breath coming into your nose, the sensation as it fills your belly and your stomach, the sensation as it leaves your body. Man, if you could just like every once in a while during the day, just be conscious for a few breaths, it's a huge, huge advantage.
amen.
And it's
Absolutely.
very pleasant. It's very enjoyable to just get there, right? So
Breath is life. I can say that from experience.
yes.
Because everything else, if you're not getting oxygen, your body starts to shut down. And that occurs, that pulse ox, the lower the level of oxygen in your blood, things start shutting off. And if it gets low enough, we shut off, right?
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
not good. Anyway, I just want to give you guys a quick list of Dr. Amen's like 5 actionables. Okay.
Lovely.
Yeah. Eat whole foods, lean proteins, healthy fats, fruits, and vegetables. We hear that all the time. The reason we hear that all the time is because it's bloody well true. Like,
Exactly.
I don't know why I'm guilty of it as much as anyone else. Reduce processed foods, reduce sugars and trans fats. Include brain boosting foods, salmon, blueberries, and leafy greens.
Mhm.
Regular physical exercise. This is huge, and he's proven it, and he and other doctors as well. If you sit and do nothing, your brain shrinks. It becomes deformed. It doesn't work right. You need to walk, swim, jog, or strength train for a minimum of 30 minutes of activity. Oh, I lost you, Alan. I'm just going to finish in case we're actually broadcasting. Prioritize sleep quality. Maintain a consistent sleep schedule and a calming bedtime routine. Create an ideal sleep environment, dark, cool, and quiet. Target 7 to 9 hours restorative sleep per night. Are you back, Alan? I'm going to keep going. Manage stress effectively. Use stress reduction techniques. As Alan said, deep breathing, mindfulness, yoga. Avoid chronic stress because it causes inflammation and your brain to shrink. Not good things. Engage in mental stimulation and learning. Word games, skills, puzzles, reading. Learn a new language. Build cognitive reserves and strength for neural connections. Languages, as I said. Play strategy games. Explore new hobbies. Try something new. Make a new friend. All of those things will improve your brain health. We seem to have lost our fearless leader, the acapellist, Alan Friesen. So I'm going to sign off now from Alan and myself, Scott Sweetman. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Well, I learned that there's a plug-in in my house that doesn't work. And so my computer didn't keep its charge. Thanks for watching H3 tonight. Sorry about the losing the last 5 things that Scott was sharing with us, but he'll put something in the show notes. Thank you.